Gentlemen, brothers and sisters, patriots all, 1776 has come again. The blue hats are coming. Or so they talk a big game at least. The UN issues warning to US authorities as Black Lives Matter protesters continue to face off against police. Ooh. Police across the US have faced criticism over the use of riot dispersing tactics upon largely peaceful protests. Wow. The United Nations wants to give America the definition of a peaceful protest on our own land. That is some privilege. The United Nations Human Rights Office, that is totally not bought off by George Soros, has issued a stark warning to authorities in the U.S. against using disproportional force against protesters and journalists involved in anti-Semitic racism protests across the country. Let's read that again. A force against protesters and journalists involved in anti-systemic. I apologize. I thought that was anti-Semitic. I got excited, guys. I thought the left was going to have to eat itself again. I apologize. Involved in anti-systemic racism protests across the country. The key points are: the UN Rights Office voiced concerns about officers obscuring their badge numbers in order to act with anonymity. Well, yeah, anonymity when dealing with these protesters is now a necessity, and it's the cancel culture that they themselves have crafted. They've made their bed, may they fucking lie in it. Police across the world have faced sharp criticism for using excessive force against largely peaceful protests. I'm sorry, but there's no such thing as excessive force when your life's on the line. You hear that properly? There's no such thing as excessive force when your life is on the line. And these police certainly have put their lives on the line against, again, the chutzpah that the UN Human Rights Commission has to define in our own land what does and does not constitute a peaceful protest is staggering. But then again, it's their prerogative, isn't it? 3. Portland's mayor was hit with tear gas alongside protesters. Fucking based. Yes. By the way, most Americans cheered when we saw that bullshit, because not only was he hit with tear gas, he was trying to pander to the protesting crowd, and they gave him hell. And as they were giving him hell, as they were getting more obnoxious, as they were getting more agitated and more violent, police needed to disperse the crowd, and said mayor was in the middle of it. He was inciting the crowd, raising them to violence, and was shocked to find that when the crowd got violent, the authorities would respond. This is peak. This is peak self-victimization of the highest order. So, the article continues. The UN called on authorities to specifically ensure federal and local police were clearly identifiable. Go fuck yourselves, UN. After images emerged of officers hiding their badge numbers when using force against protesters, this is now common practice because of the cancel culture which these protesters, which the left that supports them has created. They have made this bed, let them lie in it. I am not going to put a police officer doing his damn job in any undue risk or harm just to appease the mob they're trying to disperse. Fuck that nonsense. I am not going to do it. It is not reasonable. So, there have been reports that peaceful protesters have been detained by unidentified police officers. No, they were identifiable. You could tell who they were. You could tell which agency they worked for. You just couldn't tell their names. You couldn't see who they were individually. The fact that that's a problem for the left is, quite honestly, their problem. That is a worry because it may place those detained outside the protection of the law. Well, do you have any evidence for that worry? I don't think you do. and may give rise to arbitrary detention and other human rights violations. Again, do you have any evidence for this claim, or are you just spouting off bullshit? You're just spouting off bullshit, aren't you? The Black Lives Matter movement, rekindled in May after the murder of unarmed black men, blah, 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 saw protests across the world, protests against systemic racism held across the world. Police used riot dispersion techniques to disperse the largely peaceful protests, including in Australia. Largely peaceful? I don't know. That seems like that seems like doublespeak. Largely peaceful. What does that mean? Oh, it means that there are instances in these protests that are not peaceful, and there might be elements in these not peaceful portions that might need disbursement. Is that a little too extreme for y'all? Is that too extreme? Is that hitting it too much on the nail on the head there for you? And then we have the city of Portland, and a federal judge has issued a temporary restraining order against federal law enforcement. Ooh, bold, barring them from using force against journalists and legal observers in Portland. If the journalists are joining in the rioting, then they're part of the rioters, and their status as a journalist is no longer relevant. I mean, if you are holding a camera and throwing a Molotov cocktail at the same time, I dare say your right as a journalist might not be relevant. The militarized federal authorities deployed by the Trump administration against the wishes of local officials who are inciting chaos in their own cities against the will of their citizenry, never mind that, have used tear gas, less lethal ammunition, called rubber bullets, and other force against protesters who have been targeting the Portland courthouse with vandalism, which is against the law, by the way. Yes, under the law, the federal government has the authority to protect federal buildings and property. Though some analysts see it as a mark of Mr. Trump's campaign strategy, I like how they didn't call him president. Just that nice little jab. Campaign strategy of cracking down on law and order. Yes, because law and order is what he campaigned on, and it's what the American citizens want. You might say he has a mandate to establish law and order, a political mandate for law and order. Imagine that. On Wednesday night, Mayor Ted Wheeler was among those tear gassed by police, which we all cheered, by the way. We all cheered it. He called it an abuse of federal power that was escalating the violence. No. You were escalating the violence, Mr. Wheeler. You. It was you. We saw you do it. We saw the protesters booing you. We saw them getting more excited and incited by your words and presence. It was you riling up the rioters, Mr. Wheeler. The U.S. government department said it would investigate the incident. I hope that's all they do, is just look upon the incident and have a little laugh, because his performance was absolutely pathetic. Lawsuit has been filed on behalf of journalists whom federal agents had hit with non-lethal impact munitions. If you're that close to the fucking crowd, you might need to leave. You are ultimately the only one responsible for your own safety. I know that's a foreign concept, that personal responsibility for one's own self is something that is surely imbued with white supremacist sentiment, but nonetheless, it is a truism. You are responsible for your fucking self. Police in Chicago have also been accused of excessive force after using their batons against demonstrators who threw frozen water bottles, fireworks, and other projectiles at the officers. These fuckers are lucky they didn't get shot. They only used batons against frozen water bottles, fireworks, and other projectiles. Projectiles is the operative word here. So, as far as I'm concerned, the fact that they used batons is not excessive force. They were underforced. They were not using enough force. They should have been firing projectiles right back at the fuckers, in my humble opinion. But that's just my humble opinion. The Chicago protests targeted the statue of Christopher Columbus, which was officially removed because the mayor of that city is a cuck. Violence also erupted in Denver after Black Lives Matter's clashed with supporters of police. Police said they used pepper balls and pepper spray to disperse the larger Black Lives Matter contingent. You know what a contingent is? It's a military term for a portion of a larger force. That's where our police are in. They are in warfare. This is a war zone, a civil war zone, if you catch my drift. Now, the main story here, the main thrust here is that not only is all this going down, but the UN and their blue-hatted cronies, their the blue helmets of the UN have shaken their fist over at the US. Come on over. Go ahead. What are you going to do about it? Come on over. Come on over to the US. I beg you, please. Please invade the United States of America to enforce the will of your Human Rights Commission. Please. We will 1776 your asses happily. That's it, guys. Peace out. Stay carnal.